Welcome back to Vitamin for the Soul, the podcast that feeds your mind, nourishes your spirit, and helps you step into the best version of yourself. I'm your host, Tony Reyna, a life coach, clinical hypnotherapist, and psychology professor. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Whether you're here for guidance, motivation, or simply to connect with the community of like-minded seekers. Today's episode is about two things we all wrestle with: fear and resilience. Fear is a universal emotion. It's wired into our survival instincts, but too often it holds us back from our potential. And that's where resilience comes in. Resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about growing stronger through adversity. Together, we're going to unpack how to overcome fear and build unshakable resilience in your life. So let's start by really understanding fear. Fear at its core is a natural and essential part of being human. It's our brain's alarm system, a deeply ingrained survival mechanism designed to keep us safe. Imagine our ancestors living in the wild. They had to be alert to predators or natural dangers. Fear was their way of surviving. And it's a good thing that they had it, because we wouldn't be here otherwise. But here's the thing. In today's world, we're not often running from lions or hiding from earthquakes. The fears we face are more psychological and emotional. The fear of failure, the fear of rejection, fear of the unknown, and sometimes even fear of success. While these aren't life-threatening, they feel just as real and can completely paralyze us if we let them. Fear has a bad reputation, but I want to flip the narrative for you. Fear isn't necessarily your enemy. In fact, fear is often a sign that you're about to do something meaningful. It's kind of like standing at the edge of a cliff. Yes, it's scary, but it's also where you find the most beautiful views. I remember when I first was asked to teach a class on psychology for my initial interview at the university. Even with years of study, I felt that imposter syndrome creeping up. What if I mess up? What if my students think I'm a fraud? That fear almost stopped me from taking the opportunity, but stepping into that classroom turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life. Fear is often a sign that you're standing at the edge of growth. So here's the truth. Fear is not your enemy. It's a signpost pointing to where you need to grow. Grow. Instead of running from it, we need to learn how to work with it. So what's happening in our brains when we feel fear? It's all down to the I can't say this correctly. Amygdala, our brain's fear center. When it detects a threat, it triggers a fight, flight, or freeze response. The problem is that the amygdala doesn't always know the difference between real danger and perceived danger. That's why giving a speech or trying something new can feel terrifying as being chased by a wild animal. But here's the good news. While the part of our brain might sound the alarm, your prefrontal cortex, the logical part of your brain, has the power to calm it down. This means that with practice, you can learn to manage fear and even use it to your advantage. Fear shows up in many forms, so let's break it down. It shows up as fear of failure, fear of rejection, and fear of the unknown, also fear of success. Here's something that I learned. Fear is a feeling, not a fact. It's your brain's way of saying, hey, pay attention. But it doesn't mean you're in danger. When you feel fear, ask yourself, is this fear protecting me or is it holding me back? If it's protecting you, listen to it. But if it's holding you back, thank it for its concern and gently let it go. Here's the truth. Fear is a companion on the journey of life. You don't have to fight it or get rid of it completely. You just have to learn to live alongside it and keep moving forward. Imagine fear as a passenger in your car. It can sit in the back seat, but it doesn't get to drive. So let's try something together. So if you're not driving right now or multitasking, I want you to take a moment to close your eyes. And I want you to think about something you've been avoiding because of fear. Maybe it's starting a new project, having a difficult conversation, or making a big decision. Now, I want you to name that fear. What's it saying to you? Is it telling you you're not good enough, or maybe you're going to fail? Whatever it is, acknowledge it without judgment. So take a deep breath, in and out. Imagine yourself gently setting that fear aside, just for a moment. How does it feel? How does it feel to hold space for courage instead? Exercises like this can help you build awareness and start to shift your relationship with fear. And remember, awareness is always the first step towards change. Now that we've unpacked the nature of fear, let's talk about how to overcome it. Fear can feel overwhelming, but the good news is that it's manageable with the right tools. I've seen clients take massive strides once they understand and apply these techniques. And today I'll share these powerful tools so that you can start using them right away, along with some stories to show how they've worked in real life. So let's talk about step one, which is naming your fear. Often fear grows in the shadows. It feels big and unattainable, but like something you can't overcome when we don't confront it heads on. But when you name it, you really take away its power. You bring it onto the light where it's no longer as intimidating. So you're going to ask yourself these questions. What am I really afraid of? Is this fear based on fact, or is it a story I'm telling myself? What's the worst case scenario? And if it comes to that, can I handle it? I had a client once who wanted to start their own business, but kept hesitating. When I asked them to name their fear, they said, I'm afraid of a failure. I'm afraid people will think I'm a joke. Once they named it, we could unpack it. I asked, what if failure isn't the end? What if it's part of the process? Naming their fear helped them to see it for what it was, a story, not a reality. So when you name your fear, you shrink its power. It goes from being an overwhelming emotion to a specific challenge you can face. The second tool that we talked about is to take small, brave steps. Often we think we need to take huge leaps to overcome fear, but that can feel paralyzing. Instead, focus on the small, manageable actions that build momentum. Let's say you're afraid of public speaking. You don't have to book a TED Talk tomorrow. Start by practicing in front of a mirror. Then record yourself on your phone. Then try speaking in front of a trusted friend or family member. Each step builds confidence and reduces the fear. When I first started teaching, I was terrified of being in front of a classroom. My first step wasn't to jump into a lecture. It was practicing in front of my dog. Yep, my dog. Then I practiced in front of a close friend who gave me constructive feedback. By the time I stepped into the classroom, I wasn't fearless, but I was prepared. Fear hates action. Let me say that again. Fear hates action. Every small step you take chips away at its power. Progress isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even if you're scared. The third tool is to reframe failure. Many of us are taught to see failure as the opposite of success, but that's not true. Failure is part of the journey to success. It's how we learn, how we grow, and how we refine our approach. So next time you fail at something, ask yourself these questions. What did I learn from this experience? How can I use this knowledge to move forward? What does this teach me about resilience? I remember when I launched my first online course, I poured so much time and energy into it. But when it went live, the response was crickets. Crickets. Nobody was coming to my online course. I didn't get the sign-ups I had hoped for, and it felt like a punch to the gut. But instead of giving up, I treated it as a learning experience. I surveyed my audiences, I adjusted the course content, and relaunched it in a new approach. That failure taught me the value of listening to my audience and staying adaptable. So, failure isn't final, it's just feedback. Every time you fall, you're gaining the knowledge and the strength that you need to rise higher. Think of failure as a stepping stone, not a stumbling block. Now that we've tackled fear and how to work through it, let's move on to resilience. Resilience isn't just about bouncing back when life knocks you down. It's about coming back stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the next challenge. Resilience is a skill. And like any skill, it can be developed with practice and intention. Think of resilience as your personal shield. It doesn't make you invincible, but it does help you weather the storms of life with more grace and strength. So today I'm going to walk you through 3 key strategies for building resilience, and which are connection, self-care, and purpose. I'll also share personal stories and tips to make these concepts more actionable for you. So let's start with connection. Resilience doesn't happen in isolation. It's built through relationships. We're social creatures, and having a strong support system is one of the most powerful ways to bounce back from adversity. Think about the people in your life. Who uplifts you? Who challenges you to grow? Surround yourself with those people. And if your circle feels small, don't be afraid to reach out to a friend. Join a community or seek professional support, like booking a session with me. I'll never forget a time in my own life when I felt completely overwhelmed. I had just started my PhD program while juggling multiple jobs and personal responsibilities. It felt way too much. But instead of withdrawing, I opened up to a close friend who reminded me of my strengths and helped me prioritize. That conversation shifted everything for me. It was like, here's a motivational takeaway from that. Resilience is about remembering you don't have to do it all alone. Connection gives you the strength to keep going when life gets tough. So the second pillar of resilience is self-care. You cannot pour from an empty cup. If you're running on fumes, even the smallest setback can feel like a mountain. Self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. It's important. So start by identifying your non-negotiables. For me, it's sleep, meditation, and movement. Even on my busiest days, I make time for these because they recharge me. There was a time when I ignored self-care. I'd work late into the night, skip meals, and tell myself I'd rest when I had time. It's easy to do. Trust me. When you're busy, you just forget to eat. And eventually I hit a wall. I wasn't just physically exhausted. I was emotionally drained too. I wasn't until I prioritized self-care that I found my balance again. Think of self-care as sharpening your tools. A dual axe won't cut through challenges, but a well-maintained one can handle anything. And the third pillar of resilience is purpose. When you're connected to something greater than yourself, a goal, a passion, or a sense of meaning, it's easier to stay resilient. Purpose gives you direction, even when the road gets tough. So, if you're unsure of what your purpose is, start by asking yourself, what lights me up? What problems do I feel called to solve? What legacy do I have to leave? Your purpose doesn't have to be grand. It can be as simple as being a kind friend or even sharing your talents with the world. I once worked with a client who felt stuck in their job. They wanted to quit, but were scared of the unknown. Through our sessions, they discovered their true purpose was teaching. Go figure. They took the leap, pursued a teaching career, and found the level of fulfillment they've never imagined. Their purpose became their compass. Purpose is your why. When you're clear on why you're doing something, you can endure almost anything, anyhow. So before we wrap up this segment, I want to share a bonus strategy: gratitude. Gratitude shifts your focus from what's going wrong to what's going right. It rewires your brain for resilience. So I want you to each night write down 3 things you're grateful for. They can be big or small, like a kind word from a stranger or a moment of laughter with a friend. Over time, this practice trains your mind to look for the good, even in challenging times. So here, let me share this with you. During a particular tough season of my life, I started a gratitude journal. At first, it felt forced, but as the days went by, I noticed how much it changed my perspective. Instead of focusing on what was hard in life, I began to see all the blessings around me. It didn't solve every problem for me, but it made them feel more manageable. Gratitude doesn't erase difficulties, but it makes you stronger in facing them. It's like adding an extra layer of armor to your resilience shield. Resilience is your superpower. By building connection, practicing self-care, aligning with your purpose, and cultivating gratitude, you can face life's challenges with courage and strength. So as part of today's episode, I want to introduce a book that has proudly shaped my understanding of fear, resilience, and wholehearted living. The book is called The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. If you're not familiar with Brene's work, she's a researcher, a storyteller, and one of the most relatable voices in personal growth. This book is packed with insights and practical wisdom for anyone who wants to embrace their authentic self and find strength in vulnerability. So let's break down some of the highlights of this amazing book and how you can apply them in your life. One of the most powerful ideas in The Gifts of Imperfection is that vulnerability is not weakness, it's courage. This was a game changer for me. Think about it. We're often taught to hide our struggles, to present a perfect image to the world, but Brene challenges that idea, showing us that when we open up and allow ourselves to be seen, we create deeper connection and grow stronger. Here's how you can practice vulnerability. Start small. Share your thoughts and feelings with someone you trust. Be honest about what you're going through instead of pretending everything's fine. Remember, vulnerability invites connection. I experienced this firsthand when I launched my first podcast episode. I was terrified to share my story and my ideas with the world. But when I did, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People reached out saying they felt seen and understood. That experience taught me that vulnerability is the gateway to connection. Another powerful lesson in this book is about letting go of perfectionism. Brene describes perfectionism as a shield we use to protect ourselves from judgment and failure. But the irony is that it often holds us back from showing up authentically. She writes, perfectionism is not the same thing as striving to be your best. Perfectionism is the belief that if we look perfect and do everything perfectly, we can avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. If perfectionism is something you struggle with, I want you to try this exercise. I want you to set a timer for 15 minutes and work on a task without worrying about getting it perfect. At the end, celebrate the progress you made rather than critiquing the imperfections. I remember a time when I was writing my first hypnotherapy script. I spent hours tweaking every word, afraid it wouldn't be perfect. It was exhausting and counterproductive. Eventually, I realized that progress mattered more than perfection. That shift allowed me to complete the script and help my client in a meaningful way. Finally, Brene emphasizes the importance of authenticity in building resilience. She explains that when we live in alignment, our values show up as our true selves. We're better equipped to handle life's challenges. Authenticity isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. I want you to take a moment to reflect on this question. Are there areas in your life where you're hiding your true self? Maybe it's at work. Maybe it's in a relationship, or even in the way you speak to yourself. Start by identifying one small way you can show up more authentically this week. I used to think that I had to separate my role as a coach, a professor, and a hypnotherapist. Like I had to wear different masks for different audiences. But once I started blending all the roles and bringing my authentic self to every space, I found deeper fulfillment and greater connection with my clients and my students. So the gifts of imperfection is a reminder that we're all works in progress, and it's okay. The more we embrace our imperfections, the more we allow ourselves to grow and thrive. So this book isn't just about self-help. It's about self-discovery. And I highly recommend picking up a copy and spending time with it. Highlight the parts that resonate with you. Write in the margins. Treat it like a conversation with a wise, compassionate friend. So let me leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Miss Brene Brown. It is, owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we will ever do. So if today's episode resonated with you, I encourage you to check out The Gifts of Imperfection, or you'll find so many tools and insights to help you overcome fear, build resilience, and embrace your truest self. And if you're ready to dive even deeper, I would love to work with you one-on-one. Head over to TonyReynaCoaching.com to book a session, or subscribe to my YouTube channel where you'll find more content like this. And as we wrap up this episode of Vitamin for the Soul, I want to take a moment to reflect on everything we talked about today. We've explored the nature of fear, how it's not your enemy, but a signal that you're standing out of the edge of growth. We talked about practical tools for overcoming fear, like naming them, taking small, brave steps, and reframing failure. Then we shifted gears to focus on building resilience, developing connection, practicing self-care, and finding purpose as your guiding light. Along the way, I shared personal stories, and I hope you found pieces of yourself in these experiences. Fear and resilience are universal, but the way we face them is deeply personal. My biggest takeaway for you is this: you are more capable than you think. The fact that you're here listening to this episode tells me you're ready to step into your power. I want to leave you with one final thought. Fear and resilience are two sides of the same coin. Every time you face your fears, you're building resilience that you need to grow. It's not about never being afraid. It's about having the courage to move forward anyway. You've got everything you need within you to create the life that you deserve. I believe in you, and I'm here to support you every step of the way. Thank you for letting me be part of your journey today. I'll see you on the next episode.